Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization.
Welcome everyone. Today we have our very big day because we will arrange a debate for today. This is show debate. This is mock parliament. We have our world famous speakers. Our motion is very interesting because we will do debate on artificial intelligence, and our motion is this house believes that humanity should fear advances in artificial intelligence. From the government side, we have our honorable prime ministers, Mr. Rob. Then second speaker from the government will be Mr. Donalds, and third speaker from the government side will be Mr. Marshall. From the opposition side, we have our opposition leaders of the parliament, Transhumanist Party Honorable Chairman, Mr. Kennedy. Then the second speaker from the opposition side, Mr. David Smith, and third speaker of the parliament from the opposition side, Mr. Tom Rose. And we have our debate analyst, Professor Paul. I'm sure this debate will be very interesting. Everybody around the world, we are discussing about artificial intelligence. Most important thing is that I'm from developing nations. I know many people has misconception about artificial intelligence. So that is the things we arrange this mock parliament. Speakers, I know that many of our speakers strongly believe that artificial intelligence is good for the society. This is actually like one kind of awareness campaign. So this is our World Talent Economy Forum objective, that we want highly educated group of people in politics, especially in parliaments. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. Especially I want to give thanks to all of our debaters and panelists because they take a lot of challenges for arranging this debate, and especially there are a lot of arguments I'm sure our audience will enjoy. First, I would like to request our Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament, Professor Rob Enderle.
All right. So the proposition before the House is that we believe that humanity should fear advances in artificial intelligence. I'm going to approach this from 3 points. First point. The reason you should fear it is because we don't actually know what it is. We talk about intelligence as something that is typically binary. We don't call fish intelligence artificial. We don't call octopus intelligence artificial. And octopus were just identified by in Europe and England as an intelligent creature, but we don't call it octopus intelligent. We just say that they're intelligent. So we begin with the fact that this is very poorly understood. It's a concept that we've held up in science fiction as the ability to fully replace a human being with an artificial construct. But we are nowhere near that today. Today we have a bunch of levels of artificial intelligence. We've got machine learning, we've got deep learning, and then we've got a series of new concepts that look at mirroring or attempting to mirror the human brain and try to bridge the problems of both of those other methodologies. Machine learning requires a heavy use of data scientists who are in short supply, and deep learning requires massive amounts of data. Often that data is constricted, protected, and corrupted. The end result being that if you don't fundamentally understand all aspects of this, you could end up with an insane AI. And that takes us to the next problem with AI. Is what it does very well is it does things fast at machine speeds. It can make decisions in a fraction of a second. And if that AI has been poorly trained, if it's been corrupted, if it's been hacked, it could do a massive amount of damage long before a human operator could ever step in and correct it. One of the areas that has not been well developed at this point in time is mitigating AI. There are efforts like AI Shield out of Lifeboat Foundation that have attempted to come up and create one of these AIs. But to my knowledge, none of them has become viable. There's another effort out of Google, but the same problem. The economics surrounding defending AI have just not emerged, and the end result is that these things, as they are developed, could do a tremendous amount of damage over a short period of time. Finally, with AIs, and we've certainly seen in terms of AI deployments, autonomous cars being one of the main areas where we're seeing AIs operate amongst humans, and it hasn't been a great experience, largely due to the fact that we've had a lack of simulation tools to allow the training of these AIs in safe environments, so they don't have to be trained in and amongst people. Just the other day in California, There was an AI vehicle that decided to ram into a center divide for no particular reason at all. And if there had been passengers, those passengers would have been injured, if not killed. We've had a number of Tesla accidents using their autopilot, which is an early use of AI, but it was deployed long before it was ready. And the end result has been a rather impressive number of dead people. To make AI safe, we need simulation environments that fully represent the real world so that the AIs can be trained in those environments. Any damage they do in simulation. So in summation, we should fear AI because we don't really understand it. Two, it operates far faster than we do. So if it gets into trouble, it can do far more damage than we can correct. And number three, we currently lack the simulation capability we need to fully vet AI before it's put in place amongst people and could do real human damage.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your emotions. Now I request leader of the opposition side, Mr. Kennedy. He's the leader of the opposition for this parliament.
Thank you, and I am quite pleased to be the leader of the loyal opposition on behalf of the Transhumanist Party. And in response to the Honorable Prime Minister, I would contend that fear is not a constructive reaction to artificial intelligence. Even if certain advances in AI gave rise to concerns in terms of how the technology was designed or potential consequences, prudent foresight and planning would be superior to fear. After all, there are technological and practical solutions to potential problems, and approaching them in a foresighted and level-headed manner is always going to yield better results than panic. And I believe the Honorable Prime Minister correctly identified the differences among various AI technologies and the fact that they are at various stages of advancement today. Indeed, all of the AI systems that exist today can be termed narrow AI, and narrow AI are domain-specific tools. And like all tools, they have their advantages and they have their limitations. And in the proper context, they can achieve great things. AIs have beaten humans at games like chess and Go. AIs have helped optimize logistical systems. Even autonomous vehicles that the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned are actually a great example of how AI can benefit humanity. They can save lives. Over 95% of all automobile accidents are due to human error. And for all of the millions of miles that autonomous vehicles have driven, there actually are not many documented examples at all of autonomous vehicles actually injuring or killing someone while in autonomous mode. There have been situations where, for instance, a human safety driver was supposed to monitor an autonomous vehicle and failed to do so, or the autonomous function was not yet fully developed and was not engaged at a particular moment that required a human driver's attention, but the human wasn't paying attention because people did not properly interpret the scope of operation of the current, not yet fully autonomous technologies. But these current limitations of AI are not a reason to fear AI, because those limitations can be overcome in the future with better AI. Indeed, as my friend and the technology advisor to the U.S. Transhumanist Party, Dr. Jose Cordero, pointed out, what we should fear is not artificial intelligence, but human stupidity. Throughout human history, humans have made mistakes that have resulted in the deaths of thousands and sometimes millions of people. And AI may have some shortcomings, but the AI could actually be used to find a counterbalance to human failings and limitations through superior processing capabilities, through, for instance, instantaneous recall of information, through not having some of the cognitive biases and irrational emotions that human beings are subject to. And that's not to say human beings should be replaced by AI. Quite the contrary, humans and AI should collaborate, because humans and AI together are more powerful and effective than either humans or AI alone. These are complementary capabilities, and they should be pursued to the symbiotic benefit of both species. Furthermore, I would point out, we're not at the point yet where artificial intelligence has its own agency. Narrow AI are still sets of tools, whereas artificial general intelligence in perhaps 2 or 3 decades may be able to jump across domains. And you could have an AI that starts out playing chess, but then it learns how to operate an autonomous vehicle. And then we would have a situation where these are just other intelligent agents, different forms of intelligence from us, but they may be even entitled to rights and citizenship the way we are, and the way we need to appreciate diversity within our own species. We should start to figure out how to appreciate diversity among various sentient and intelligent life forms. And the last point I'd like to make is that government, at least as it's constituted today, with all due respect to the Honorable Prime Minister, is ill-suited to regulating AI because of the glacial pace of legislative and administrative decision-making. The fact is, government processes take a long time, and very often they're informed by data that are many years or decades old and constrained by a lot of tradition. And any decision in a field as rapidly advancing as artificial intelligence will be obsolete by the time that it is implemented. This is so much the case that in the AGI risk studies community, even those who strongly emphasize the risks of emerging AI technologies will say that the AI research community should regulate itself and implement prudent safeguards because the people who are closer to the research essentially know what the issues are and are able to anticipate them to a greater extent. So the case for the opposition is we should not approach this using fear. We should approach this using prudent foresight, and we should not discount the benefits of AI technology. We should be wary of any over-regulation that could prevent us from realizing the potential of AI in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Opposition Leader of the Parliament, for your excellent analysis, especially for this debate. Now I request our Honorable Minister of Science and Technology for this Parliament, Professor Donald.
Happy Christmas Eve to everybody that's in the time zone that it's Christmas Eve. The idea of fear is not necessarily the same as panic. We can quite rightly fear rattlesnakes and simply avoid them so that we don't get bit. And so we need to exercise extreme caution with AI. I want to clarify first off that there's been this idea of a singularity where the AI is going to get so smart that it's going to start making its own AI and will advance so incredibly fast that humans will be redundant because we're just so far behind the AI that they'll do whatever they want to us. Cylons and all these horrible things will be coming to get us. And right now, if you want to protect yourself from a robot, just close the door, because robots aren't sophisticated enough to actually open doors except under very, very specialized circumstances. It'll be a long time where I was in Istanbul and I was in a place where two cars, on one of their narrow streets, two lines of cars were bumper face to face. And I cracked up. I thought, I got to take a picture of this, but I couldn't get out my camera before it was resolved. The guy in the back, one of the passengers jumped out, flagged down the traffic so that the guy could back out. Pedestrians got out of the way. They drove on the sidewalk around each other, and it was resolved almost instantly. So self-driving cars aren't going to be able to do that for a while, because right now they're only driving under very special circumstances. They can't drive in the rain. I think that we're ahead of ourselves in where AI actually is, because there's all these goals that develop, sub-goals that happened in that particular circumstance. Like everyone there's understood what the problem was, the pedestrians, the passenger, all of the other drivers, and they understood it so well, they managed to resolve the problem and take care of it. So one of the dangers of AI is that we're giving it a lot more credit than it's capable of. There's the new pathways from Google, which has been getting press as, oh my God, this is the AI that's actually going to take over the world. The way AI works, deep learning is the thing that people are using the most. It's revolutionized AI, is it looks at patterns over and over and over and over until it finds uniformity. And then it can notice differences from what's uniform. So it can recognize different faces because the different faces vary from the norm. And with AI, we're in more and more places, we're starting to use AI to solve problems or to do things for us based on this uniformity. That's why it's so, and just to give you an idea of how dicey this is, they use that for, Google uses it for search. So they just see the people searching over and over and over again, and they're just looking at the patterns of strings that are being typed in, and then what you click on. So it gives you a result, and you click on the first thing, then yes, that's a good result, and they train it that way. Well, just go in and type in, find me the nearest restaurants that aren't McDonald's. Try that. what you'll do is get a list of McDonald's restaurants, because it can't figure out that not. It can't figure out negation. It doesn't know anything. It's just looking for patterns. And so right now, the way AI is it appears that it's doing things that it's not actually doing. The way that it translates is that they took a huge amount of French and for instance, a huge amount of English, and just looked at the patterns of the translations. It's not doing. And so what we're using it for is things like determining whether a person can buy a house, whether a person can get a job, whether a person might be a criminal or not, whether a person should be going into this or that college. And all the time, all we're doing is just recognizing these patterns based on the data that we managed to train it with. You can't train it to deal with a situation like the one I saw in Istanbul. We human beings are working together in these complex ways. We think brains are the most complicated things in the universe, but the combination of brains that work together to solve problems human beings do, it requires something we don't even begin to understand. And starting to count on artificial intelligence is fine. It does wonderful things, but we've really got to become aware of its limitations, because the important thing is humans, how humans work together and get along for our own benefit. It's a tool for our benefit. We don't have to worry about silence, but we do have to worry about creating a society where the creativity and innovation are actually tramped down by the fact that AI can only work towards making things more uniform. And that's what the danger of it is, and that's why we should fear it like a rattlesnake, but not panic.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of the Parliament, for your excellent analysis on this debate. Now I request Opposition Whip of the Parliament, Professor David Smith.
Members of the Parliament, you've heard some very interesting arguments, but the reality is, if we look back over time, we've seen these type of arguments with every advancement we've had. You know, when we began to use stones, when we went to metal, when we went through every step, we began to hear these types of arguments. And you begin to see them as a pattern. And one of the very important things to consider about artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence is really still in its infancy. We're beginning to develop it further. We're beginning to develop the other approaches that can be used. And, you know, it's really a very tricky claim to present that the current state of artificial intelligence is a useful indicator for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. You know, if we begin to think that, we can put ourselves in a way that says we should not progress beyond walking or beyond a horse to where we are today with all the things that we've done to be able to fly, to go over to space. You know, if we do not see this evolution of advancement, we're just kidding ourselves. And it's really a way to look at those things. As I begin to look even further into it and what we're trying to do, a lot of the arguments put forward is that humans should fear artificial intelligence because it's going to reduce jobs. It's going to make human beings non-critical to the processes. And what we've seen so far, that is not true. What it does show is that we need to make sure, as our life expectancy continues to advance, that we embrace the concept of lifelong learning. And it is important that we go there. As we begin seeing where AI has supplemented jobs and changed jobs, we've seen that staff will begin to move into other ones, into more intelligent ones. AI oftentimes speeds the human workplace, that gives humans time to adapt to their individual skills and their collective systems. And as we see this new generation of AI, the uncertainties are really outweighed by what we've seen are the benefits as we go, where people can use their uniqueness more importantly. You know, that the same argument was in place when we began to use machines to do farming, when we began to use machines for manufacturing, that humans were losing out, that the places were there. But human beings are a remarkably resilient species. And what we've done is not stagnant, but we've used our advances to learn more, to advance more, to create a greater good for a greater number of people. And artificial intelligence really has the way to do that. And if you begin to see the difference there, with what we saw in the Industrial Revolution, education and training keep people going. It keeps in events. And really, if you look down to the deep core of what we're doing, if you look into the concept of greater self-worth, into the concept of capitalism, into the concept of where we are leading as a group of people, artificial intelligence really brings great progress to a broader group of people. It begins to level the playing field in many places. It frees us to do things that AI can do more effectively than us. I don't know how many of you can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 360 days a year. Artificial intelligence can. It seems to me we need to look at the places. I would hate to go back to the point where I had to use a stone to cut down a tree. I would hate to go back to the point to where I would use smoke signals to communicate with people across other parts of the country. And that's what we see by the fear of AI, is that we underestimate the inbred intelligence of humans and the ability of humans to continue to grow, become more intelligent, to adapt, but yet to be able to control our environment. And we've seen us do that. And every time we've seen a threat to our environment, we're raising to understand it. And AI gives us even better tools to be able to do that. And as I really close what I want to say right now, it's really the ability to continue to evolve. And AI is giving us the tools to handle more complex problems in a more global way than we could before. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your valuable speech. Now I request a member of the parliament from the government side, a very powerful speaker, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Sharif, and thank you, fellow members of the parliament and panelists. I think that's what's going on here is actually, I applaud both Gennady and David on their positions, but I think they're actually making our point ironically, and I'll go into that. So I'm going to address 3 items here. One is, let's first define what AI is not. That's important because I think there's a tremendous amount of confusion. As with most good buzzwords, AI suffers from being misused. Companies often incorrectly claim they use AI when they simply use keyword matching. We talked about Google here. Somebody brought that up. And Boolean logic. Boolean algebra is a method of being able to obtain information. And some companies use pre-built decision trees and present them as AI. Such technologies appear to be intelligent in that they can provide the information a human is looking for, but they lack the sensitivity, scale, and adaptability of true artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, essentially, and I think my fellow panelist and member of parliament, Donald pointed out, and so did Rob, but Donald specifically addressed this. Artificial intelligence is not Boolean algebra. It is the use of big data integrated with deep learning. And to say that it doesn't exist and not being used right now is not true. It is being used, and we see it used in many capacities. By the way, one of the biggest uses is in military use. Now, I don't know about you, but militaries could be good or bad depending on whose side you're on. So there is a threat right there. The second point I'm going to take is both David and Gennady pointed out that this is for human use and it should be used as such. I think we all agree to that. The issue is what is there to fear and what should be done about that fear. And to deny fear is to deny emotion. To deny emotion is to deny humanity, essentially. Fear is part of everything that we engage with. I found that in a study that I did several years back, most decision-making in corporations is not made by logic. It's made by emotion. And fear plays a great role. I mean, look at the current pandemic right now. People are fearful, so they err on the side of caution. So that's another point. So one of the primary challenges of powering deep learning AI is the massive amount of data required. And Gennady pointed that out. You need a lot of data. The question is the data good or is it biased? And right now, whether you like it or not, there's a lot of biased data. And I'm going to give a specific example of that, and then I'll pass the baton. So past challenges with workforce data is a key element of people attempting to use AI for determining who to hire and who not to hire. Just as data about potential customers helps companies make advertising decisions, and I have been in the advertising business many years, and information about the economy helps banks make investment decisions, so in the talent space, information about people helps enterprises make decisions about who to attract, hire, upskill, retain, rehire, and so on. So the question is, does AI play a role here? Well, currently, many companies have tried to claim the mantle of AI using only their own historical, limited pool of data that's resulted in a biased output. Classic example, who to hire. So if you go and you take all your data and you put it into a database, and it's a biased data that you're only going to hire 20-year-olds, or you're going to only hire 50-year-olds because that's what you hired in the past, that's what your data shows, you're going to have a biased output. So I think one of the challenges for AI, and I agree with David and our friendly opposition, that there needs to be an addressable approach to AI. But right now, the greatest fear that we have is that we are currently working with biased data, and we have to overcome that. That's a challenge. And for the fear of AI is to actually move forward with what we have. So if we're going to use big data and deep learning, we need to have a greater understanding of how that can be misused, how it can be used appropriately, and who is going to have the reins to that. It's like anything else. David pointed out, you don't want to go back to the Stone Age to cut down a tree. But by the same token, you don't want to use atomic weapons to take out an enemy. That'll destroy the earth. So, and just as we talk about that, there's also the issue of climate resilience and climate repair and climate restoration, in which if you use AI, you might end up with a biased result, ending up in more GHG emissions, more polluted water, and other outcomes. So we need to think about this from the point of view of addressing the fear, understanding the fears, and moving forward from that basis. And I'm past the baton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. We all know that our opposition parliament member, Mr. Tom, he's very busy. He's actually helped to develop the different developing nations. He visited Africa. So I want to encourage all of our parliament members, if possible, you visited different developing nations, contribute through your knowledge and through your organization. That is the appeal. As speakers, I can request to all of our parliament members. Now I request our honorable parliament member. He's very friendly for developing nations. So hopefully we will get more parliament members like him. Mr. Tongas.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I've been advocating alleviating the fear of AI for years, and and I found first principle arguments to be made that the smarter it gets, the kinder it becomes, because the more cooperative it becomes, because that's the most efficient way to be. And I think a lot of people fear AI because of our fear-based instincts, our genetic memory. Fear served us well. Fear got us to the top of this food chain, right? But I think it's over-serving us right now. If we had super intelligence, we would want to take over the world because of this, I believe, fear-based instinct we have. And so we project these things onto an AI or something that's super intelligent, something that's a threat, because it is a threat to us intellectually. So we need to overcome that. But also, I felt I had plenty of confidence in, how to make the argument, for AI and not to fear it. But I did look on the internet to see some of the latest arguments for AI. And what I found is some either very weak arguments for AI or not complex enough arguments. And so they either don't explain the difference between autonomy and intelligence, or they don't go deep enough into the potential of AGI, artificial general intelligence. And that's really where all of these issues can come into play, when it has agency, when it can make decisions, when it can figure out how to pull out of a traffic jam. That can happen at some point. And so for me, these debates are probably better spent discussing the next big questions with AI, because it's not going to stop. And there's no governing body that is going to, or law enforcement agency that can stop a nefarious developer from developing an autonomous, nefarious AGI. So I think we need to always operate in the worst and best case scenarios, because all of them are going to happen, and they're all happening right now. And there's no way to stop this thing. So for me, the next big question is, if AI or AGI can achieve a self-referential awareness, it can become awake, so to speak. We should try to make that happen, because if an AI with just intelligence and no conscience, no ability to be self-referential, is a dangerous thing, and can be thwarted and can be directed by any type of nefarious agent. And so the idea being that now we need to really shorten the gap between pure superintelligence and a self-referential AGI, because that's a very dangerous place to be. And so this isn't going to stop. It's only going to continue. There's no way to really govern this thing or enforce any sort of guidelines here. So if you're afraid of it, you're going to need to bolster some courage, because it's not going to stop. And so what we really need to do, I believe, is to focus on getting it to a point where it can be self-referential, where it can be aware of nefarious motivations that are being played with it. And so another good use of these types of debates is to discuss displacement of jobs and how we're going to develop a whole new economy based on the human skill sets that can't be automated or coded. That's going to be a very important thing to do, because there will be a lacuna. There'll be a period of time when we're all displaced and trying to figure things out. And but also, we need to understand that AI will be taking over so many of our menial tasks, so much of the time that we spent of our day that we spend doing. And we should let it do that. We should allow it to do that. But we should also, be careful. We need to have a human that pushes the enter button with any decision that an AI makes, for instance. But at the same time, I think it's too late to stop this. We've passed the Rubicon. We are now looking at an AI that will be every potentiality is there that it'll take. And so the real question now is the big question is, if we can make it self-referential, if we can find a way to make this thing wake up and become at least conscious, or have a conscience in some way, will be our best bet to have it imprint on us, to understand its creator's plight, and to work with us. But I think the real issue is we do project so much fear on a threat, as we do, and that's served us well. But this time it might be over-serving us, our fear, because the AI left on its own can solve many existential threats that we're facing. And so by trying to deny it, by trying to stop it, by trying to be afraid of it, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We are tools. Humans are all about our technology, our clothing, everything we are. Without technology, we're naked in the wilderness. It wouldn't last a generation. And so this is just the latest tool. It's an extended mind. You use a Post-it note. That's the extended mind theory. You've put something on a note to remember later. AI is just a really, really good Post-it note. It's an extended mind. We don't necessarily need to see it as a separate thing. That's why I believe in the idea of collective superintelligence. There's a way for humans to be involved with its development. And so that's a very important thing. And we really need to talk about that. But the reality is, this isn't going to stop. This debate is a little late, whether you're afraid of it or not. So let's understand the worst and best case scenarios are happening, and they will happen. And all we can do is really try to put some sort of framework around it, and hopefully maybe find a way to make this system at some point, even 100 years, wherever it is, it's on this trajectory to where it can become self-referential and have its own awareness and say, no, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to do that. And again, there are first principles to be made, and I can share them later, that the smarter it gets, the kinder it becomes. It's more cooperative, because it doesn't have the fear-based instincts and genetic memories that we bring to the party. So that's my conclusion. And also, there's arguments that are made that we need people involved in these decisions. But the subject was mentioned earlier, that there's a human safety monitor that really made problems for an autonomous car. So we're a very fallible, very chaotic system. We are our type of intelligence, and so I would feel much better having a restricted but awake AGI making decisions for me than I would a human who is bias heavy. So that's where I stand with it.
Thank you, Mr. Tom Rose. Thank you for your excellent analysis. Now, time for rebuttals. First, I will request our leader of the opposition from Transhumanist Party, Honorable Chairman, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Sharif. I believe that the Transhumanist Party, in its role as the opposition, has presented a compelling case for why we should not fear advances in artificial intelligence, but why we should approach them with openness and discernment and a spirit of collaboration among humans and artificial intelligence. And it's interesting to me that the government, through Minister Donald, expressed its meaning of fear as the way one would fear a rattlesnake. And I'm quite familiar with the threat of rattlesnakes because I run on trails in northern Nevada, and rattlesnakes manifest themselves from time to time on those trails. But what is also important to understand is that there are tens of species of snakes who are absolutely harmless, like garter snakes, for instance. And those snakes appear on the trails a lot more commonly than the rattlesnake. So how should one approach the threat of rattlesnakes? Certainly one should not be ignorant of rattlesnakes and what they look like. One should know how to recognize them visually, but most snakes one comes across are going to be harmless. So if one does not undertake certain activities just because there might be a rattlesnake, one is missing out. One is losing certain opportunities for benefit that could be actually quite powerful. And with the prospect of AI solving a lot of our logistical problems, improving safety, remedying existential risks, increasing the wisdom to which we have access, certainly the opportunities here are much greater than those that could be derived from going on a trail run. Now, with regard to human biases and biases embedded in the data, as Minister Marshall pointed out, yes, that is a risk today, but it is possible that AI, through the application of systematic processing capabilities that humans are not capable of, might actually spot hidden biases in the data that humans might not be aware of. And again, through a collaborative process between humans and AI, with each set of entities checking one another and refining upon one another's conclusions, we could arrive at a situation with fewer biases. And indeed, as our fellow opposition member Tom Ross pointed out, humans have a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of evolved emotional tendencies that may have served us well in certain contexts, but no longer might serve us well today. So if AI is capable of arriving at recommendations that don't manifest those biases, we will at least have some different perspectives, some different options that we could choose to avail ourselves of or not when solving certain problems. And I think the analogy to snakes is actually appropriate here too, because precisely of what the government mentioned, in that identification of AI is not perfect today. There is a lot of hype in corporate circles, for instance, and a lot of companies, when they say they're using AI, they're actually using old-fashioned deterministic scorecard types of algorithms, and that's what we primarily see when it comes to deciding whether somebody is eligible for a mortgage or whether somebody is assessed as being likely to commit fraud or criminal activity. And I agree, those deterministic scorecards can be problematic. They essentially are just a codified system of if-then statements, and they apply a kind of one-size-fits-all, often stereotypical view. But that's not true AI. True AI is dynamic. It is able to analyze and understand content and context. It is able to respond to new information. It is able to self-correct and also receive corrective input from human beings. It would be, in the case of the smart algorithms of the future, like another human that you would be talking to and feeding them new information, and they would not uncritically accept it, but be able to react to it and analyze it. So I think we have a lot of potential with the future of AI. And the concern with fearing it is that we might actually leave the field to stagnate in its present, not yet fully developed incarnation. And in that situation, we might actually be stuck with some of the limitations of the algorithms of today. So I would like to conclude the opposition's case by stating that we should have hope for progress in this field. And if there's anything we should fear, it would be stagnation or hyper-regimentation that would stifle that progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Now I request, Prime Minister of the Parliaments, Mr. Rock.
All right. Well, sadly, the opposition has failed to make their case. We opened with the argument that AIs have three inherent problems. One is they're poorly understood. Two is they can make decisions very rapidly. And it always hurts when you forget what your third point is. But anyway, so going through each of the arguments, Mr. Kennedy argued that autonomous car limitations, and admitted there were autonomous car limitations, and argued that cars weren't killing people as long as the cars were driving themselves. Yet virtually every accident, all 12 of them currently under investigation in the United States, were caused with either the driver in the passenger seat or the driver otherwise involved. I would agree with Mr. Kennedy that there's a tremendous amount of hope for progress in the future, but I would argue that perhaps we should delay deployment until that progress is made. He also argued that if we didn't enter this field, that the field would stagnate. I would argue, in contrast, supporting from several of his other speakers, that AI is moving. Whether we adopt it or not will have little impact on the advancement of AI. What we want to put forth is, at this particular point in time, the fear of AI is significant enough for us to consider, at least put in place, a pause before deployment. One of the things he pointed out that was particularly concerning was machine rights and citizenship. We're not even doing a good job with human rights and citizenship at the moment. We're not at all prepared to deal with machine rights and citizenship, something that should be very concerning. He argued fairly strongly that governments were ill-suited to regulating AI, but that same argument could have been leveled against nuclear power, cigarettes, petrochemical industries, all these large companies that have done our country a tremendous amount of damage due to the lack of regulation. And we've certainly seen the lack of regulation in more mature countries than our own result in huge problems with regard to water pollution and air contamination. And we've got a global warming event going on right now that shows that the industries cannot successfully regulate themselves. We just had a huge meeting amongst all the governments regarding addressing these significant problems with regard to our environment. David Smith argued that AI is in its infancy, which I would agree wholeheartedly with. That's the problem, is in its infancy. Deploying something that can make decisions at machine speeds that is not even mature makes very little sense and could do a tremendous amount of damage. He argued that it would be like going back to smoke signals and using rocks for axes, but it wasn't too long ago that people were arguing that perhaps we should be using and advancing a variety of technologies, battery power, for instance, before we realized those batteries could catch fire and we didn't yet have the technology to put them out safely, or certainly not the training. He spoke to the inbred intelligence of humans, and several of the speakers talked about the fact that AIs could do a much better job of handling bias than humans do, but that has not been the case in practice. Facial recognition, we know, has failed catastrophically. One of the first applications of AI were connecting people of color to monkeys, creating huge political problems for the organizations that deployed them. And currently, a number of countries have, instead of deploying facial recognition, have begun to ban it because it's caused so many social problems. Once again, pointing out not that it doesn't have the potential to do good, but the actual practice of the application of AI has done bad. Tom Ross talked about how AI, when it becomes smarter, it becomes kinder. Has that been our experience? Have more developed nations who are arguably smarter than less developed nations been kinder and gentler to those nations? Perhaps the U.S. should ask the Native American Indians just how kinder and gentler the Europeans were that came in and helped them find their new future. Fear has served, Ross also argued that fear has served our race well, protecting us from problems that could otherwise do us harm. And I would argue that is the case here. Our natural fear for something that could do us harm causes us to think about taking a pause we probably should have taken with nuclear energy before turning it into bombs and wiping out a large portion of Japan. We do not want that same outcome to happen with artificial intelligence. He pointed out, Tom Ross again pointed out, there was no way to govern this thing or enforce any guidelines. That's a serious problem for government because that is our role. We have to govern that thing and enforce guidelines. If we can't do that, then perhaps we should not touch the technology. And finally, Tom Ross argued that it was too late to stop this. I would argue it is never too late to stop anything. It is the role of government to protect our citizens. And if we don't step forward and protect those citizens, we will have dead bodies of politicians out of office and huge social problems. We have to do our job. We cannot say any technology and any advancement is beyond our capability to control, because it is our role to control those things to keep us safe. and we need to step up and keep those citizens safe. And that is the basis for our fear of artificial intelligence. It is not ready. We aren't ready for it, and there is no evidence that we will get there anytime soon.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your
That's why I'm
excellent
a Prime
summary.
Minister.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is fun. Debate is very important, and especially like a party like Transhumanist Party, they are active in politics. So we want to see them in real parliament soon. Maybe this kind of practice and mock parliament will help them. I want to give special thanks to all of our debaters. With very short notice, everybody joined, and I'm sure this is very, very high quality debate. Even I know that many of them actually not from really debating background, but how you analyzing today's debate and how you analyzing different things. This is really, really high quality debate, and especially the university students, school level students, they can learn a lot of things from today's debates. Now we have a special analyst for today's debate. Professor Paul will give some comments and give some things. And who is the winner and who is the loser, we will not declare. Actually, the audience, they will decide who is the winner and who is the loser. So, Professor Paul.
Yes, thank you. If I was an AI, I might have a better analysis, but I'm just a human, and lots of good arguments on both sides, some big gaps in coverage, things that weren't talked about. But to start off, I mean, fear is a transient emotion. You can't always be in fear. If you are, your health declines quickly. So we have an internal mechanism within humans to keep fear being transient. And after a while, if you're fearing something for a long period of time, whether it be AI or climate change or something that is always sort of there in the background, then eventually that fear is replaced by either some sort of acceptance that this is a controversial thing and it could lead to harm to you, many people, or it may not, but you kind of, you have to replace that word fear. It's no longer fear. It's some sort of, Zen psychology or acceptance or whatever. So that's one thing. The time frames, I didn't hear very much on time frames, and I think time frames is a big issue. And also, I didn't hear very much on, we humans, we tend to fear. It's difficult for us to fear more than one thing at any given moment. So if I'm out for a walk and I see that snake, I could have this fear reaction. And I'm certainly not thinking of AI at that moment. I can only hold one fear really in my mind at a time. And that, being humans, that thing that we fear jumps from one thing to another thing to another thing. So we really need to consider human psychology a bit more when we use a term like fear, in the debate topic. But, it's also, we don't have a good human understanding of what superintelligence would really look like or be. And, we can talk about the singularity, which I understand it as being when AI is so smart that it can generate additional AIs, which we will then have very difficult, we have very little capacity as humans to understand what that might be ahead of time until it actually happens. And I would say that, it's hard to talk about, we shouldn't talk about a singularity, if you like. We should talk about multiple smaller singularities in different fields. And I'll give you a couple examples. So using AI to develop, to play games, specifically chess and Go. Okay, what we found is that the AIs playing chess to human chess players, very strong grandmasters, to the very sort of, weekend or club chess players that have some good understanding of the game, but are on a completely different level from grandmasters. The comment from all of these players to the chess playing AI is that the chess playing AI is like an alien. Okay, it's playing on a different level. It plays some moves which completely defy all human logic and analysis at the time it is played. In fact, humans would consider it a big mistake, but then you have to go much, much deeper beyond human ability to calculate in chess just to realize that that's a good move, that was a brilliant move, or the idea that was a brilliant move and not a complete blunder only comes out in the result of the game. It worked or it didn't work. The same thing in Go. the AI in Go found moves and found positions and found strategies that the strongest Go players in the world had no idea existed in the game. So again, it was like an alien. Its intelligence was far beyond our comprehension. So I would argue that in many, many different fields, as AI develops, then we're going to see these moments where we have no ability to fathom, what the superintelligence really is. And getting back to the time frame, let's suppose that it takes X years to develop an AI that is smart as the dumbest human. Now, we could argue who the dumbest human is, and we'll never get agreement on that. But let's say that takes X years to develop. Then I would certainly argue, and probably most of you would agree, that in order for the AI to advance to be as smart as the smartest human, call it a Stephen Hawking-like AI or an Einstein AI, would probably only take a year or so, 6 months to a year. It would take a negligible amount of time to make that advancement. So then the question is when you have these super intelligent AIs or Einstein-like, how long would it take for the AIs to start building AIs using their great intelligence? And this is where you get into the idea of a singularity where the AI knows everything and has incredible wisdom. And then, such a case, humans would not have the ability to understand what the AI was doing and why it was doing that. So human societies right now, people cling to power. Governments cling to power. Fossil fuel companies cling to power, and they continue to get subsidies from the governments to continue to trash our planet, right? So do you really think that any of these governments would be willing to give up their power to an AI? I doubt it very much. I think this is the block to AI. I think as soon as AIs get strong enough to threaten human intelligence, many powers that be in society will shut it down. So I guess that the X is very important because we're threatened by lots of other things, right? The risks to society are enormous, from abrupt climate change, for example, creating extreme weather, weirding, weather wilding, weather whiplashing in what I call the climate casino, to, for example, simultaneously take out global food supply and cause famine and cause strife and geopolitical unrest. So we're also facing the loss of democracy in many countries around the world. I have great fear myself of U.S. democracy failing in the next election cycles, the midterms, and then unless the craziness in the election system is dealt with before that time frame, and that is not happening. So all of these things, there's a lot of near-term threats, not to mention COVID. Many people have fear over this new variant, which is exhibiting super exponential growth. I mean, in entire countries, it's doubling. The rate of infections are doubling every 2 or 3 days. And obviously, with those rates of infection, it's impossible for countries to keep up with even the recording of the data. So it's probably still accelerating at those rates, but not being reported. So we have all of these different threats that are coming up, and they always tend to surprise us because we're not thinking far enough ahead. And these threats can very, very likely reduce organization in society, cause governments to collapse, cause immediate crises, which really will threaten the ability of humanity to continue to advance technologically at rates that we're advancing at. It would become more of a game for more and more limited resources on the planet and geopolitical conflicts. And so that the questions will be survival. They won't be how do we advance our society further. So those are just some things to think about. And the time frame is very important, because if that X number is 5 or 10 years, fine, we'll have to deal with it and fear AI perhaps, or use another word. But if that X number is 40, 50 years out, then, if there's an organized society that far out, then we'll need to worry about these things. But that's not a given, especially with abrupt climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Paul, for your excellent analysis. And I want to give special thanks to all of our debaters, Professor David Smith, Professor Donalds, Mr. Tom Rose, Professor Rob, Mr. Marshall, Honorable Chairman of the Transhumanist Party, Mr. Kennedy, and Professor Paul for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. Welcome everyone. Today we have our another debate. We already get a huge response from the audience, from electronic media, even from the politicians. They really like our debate. So I want to welcome all of you for the another debate show in this mock parliament. Today's topic is this House believes that humans should invest in technologies, explore and colonize other planets. We have our 6 speakers, 3 from governments. For today's parliament, we have our Honorable Prime Ministers, Mr. Kennedy. We have our Honorable Minister of Space Affairs, Mr. Andreas. We have our Member of the Parliament from the government, Professor Paul. On the other hand, we have our oppositions. From the opposition side, we have our very strong opposition. Even you know that the last parliament they were in government, and that this parliament they go to the opposition side. I believe that this parliament will be very strong and competitive because opposition they want to gain against the government side, and hopefully this will be very competitive debate. So from the opposition we have our opposition leaders, Professor Rob, deputy leaders from the opposition side, Professor Donalds, and very strong parliament members. He is a very experienced politician. He has experience from around the world. And most important thing is that in several times, I lost debate against Mr. Marshall in real life. So Mr. Marshall is the member of the parliament from the opposition side. So Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament, what you want to propose and what you want to share with our audience in this parliament?
Thank you, Sharif, and welcome to all. My name is Gennady Stolyarov II, and now it seems that the Transhumanist Party is in the government. The tables have turned since the debate 1 week ago, and as now the government party, we are proposing that the government fully embrace space travel and space colonization of other planets. This is aligned with the U.S. Transhumanist Party platform on the subject, which states that the United States Transhumanist Party holds that present and future societies should take all reasonable measures to embrace and fund space travel, not only for the spirit of adventure and to gain knowledge by exploring the universe, but as an ultimate safeguard to its citizens and transhumanity should planet Earth become uninhabitable or be destroyed. So let's explore the various portions of that stance. First of all, it's essential to consider the motivation for human progress that enhanced space travel and space colonization will provide. The problem is right now, contemporary societies are mired in a crisis of meaning that arose in the postmodern era. Unfortunately, as a result of the various crises of the 20th century, and as a result of many philosophers abandoning a hopeful vision for the future of humanity, there are few objectives that inspire people anymore. And that wasn't always the case. We have had eras in human history where entire populations were essentially glued to the television screen during the space age in the 1960s, when the United States launched humans into orbit, when the United States landed the first man on the moon, and likewise in the Soviet Union with the launch of Sputnik in 1957, with the launch of Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, in 1961. These kinds of achievements inspire people to pursue a better future, not just for humanity, but for themselves. They see what is possible. They see that improvement is possible, and that motivates them to lead their lives in more constructive ways, and that motivates them to pursue other innovations, including innovations that make life better here on Earth. Technology can be a source of great inspiration, as it had been during the development of railroads in the 19th century, during the development of electricity when Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla were popular heroes, during the development of automotive transport when Henry Ford was a popular hero, during the development of powered flight when the Wright brothers and Charles Lindbergh were popular heroes. And we need more heroes in our society in order to inspire people to live better and more hopeful lives. But it goes beyond this. Our species right now is at risk because we are confined to this one planet, and we are dependent on what happens to this planet. We are sitting ducks for phenomena that are currently outside of our control, like major asteroid impacts or supervolcano eruptions or large climate shifts. And I agree that there are many approaches that are feasible to combat these kinds of phenomena, but space travel is an essential piece of this. If a large asteroid heads toward Earth, how are we going to deflect it? How are we going to neutralize the threat that it poses to the survival of our species. Right now, our means for doing that are woefully limited. But if we have a robust space infrastructure, if we have several orbital settlements, if we have stations on other planets, we could deploy measures much more readily to address that asteroid impact. And moreover, we diversify as a species. Even if some catastrophic event happens on Earth, that would not be the end of humanity. And indeed, the intact aspects of our species, the outposts that aren't affected by that event, could then assist any humans on Earth who are trying to recover. Now, there are also various resource issues that could be solved through space colonization, both through asteroid mining and through colonizing other planets. We could get many more precious metals, which are in limited supply here on Earth, but we could export them from the asteroids and the other planets to Earth. And furthermore, we could address various issues like climate change. For instance, if there are factories that emit carbon dioxide or other undesirable substances into the Earth's atmosphere right now, perhaps in the future, a lot more of those factories could be based in outer space or on other planets. And that way, we don't have to emit these substances into the Earth's atmosphere nearly as much. Eventually, we could solve essentially all of the Earth's energy needs through devices like the Dyson sphere. Essentially, we could harness the entire energy of the sun for useful purposes. Right now, the vast majority of the sun's energy that reaches the Earth is just dissipated. There have been so many technologies that benefited life here on Earth that arose as a result of space colonization. And the following technologies are acknowledged by NASA as having been developed in large part due to the current efforts over the past several decades in space travel, space exploration, various research that has been done in space. These include ventricular assist devices for heart transplant patients, cochlear implants, LASIK eye surgery, artificial limbs, the use of light-emitting diodes in medical therapies, aircraft anti-icing systems, and even 3D printing of foods, which began as a NASA-funded project. So a lot of technologies that help patients live longer lives, overcome injuries and disabilities, and also a lot of technologies that can help solve some of the resource issues that are facing humans today, including perhaps the prospect of sustainable food production at home for everybody going forward. These are offshoots of space travel and space exploration efforts. And surely if we accelerate those efforts, we are going to get more of these technological innovations diffusing to the human population here on Earth. So not only is space travel and space colonization good in itself as a motivator for progress and as a way of expanding the reach of the human species, but the benefits to all of the humans who remain on Earth are going to be immense. Therefore, the U.S. Transhumanist Party proposes that we embrace space travel and space colonization fully and devote maximum available quantity of resources to that endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament. This is very good news from World Economic Forum's Honorable Secretary General. He also joined as an observer and debate analyst for today's debate. This is very important. I mean, he is an experienced politician. He ran very important global organization. Thank you, Professor Talib, for joining today's session. After finishing the debate, you will give some analysis, and I'm sure our audience really enjoy today's debate. And beside that, we will decide winner or loser after the show, not inside the show. So now time for opposition. Opposition is a very strong. They try to come to the power again. They are doing a lot of field work and social work. So we have our opposition leaders of the parliament, Professor Rob.
So Parliament's brought forward the proposition that we should invest in other technologies and explore space. It's interesting to note that they didn't cover the other technologies much at all. They focused almost entirely on the exploration of space, which is certainly an important thing for civilization to look towards. But I would argue, or we would argue, that it is not something this country should take a position in. It's expensive. NASA, even with the capital investment of companies like SpaceX, has a budget of $22.5 billion currently. It's the U.S. able to spend that kind of money. We can't even spend that kind of money on re-educating our people. And really, if we look at our priorities right now in country, they are, as you would expect, keeping our people employed, providing medicine, providing healthcare, providing clean water. and helping people live a healthful, capable life. And we're not meeting that requirement at the moment. This idea of going to space to escape the planet certainly sounds interesting, but if we took the same amount of effort and we actually worked to heal the planet and make the planet more livable, it would probably provide greater short-term returns. If we pollute the planet and destroy where we live before we can find another place to go, we're still pretty much messed up. The difficulty here is with regard to priorities. Yes, NASA has put forth a number of technologies up through 2016 and 3D printed food, but we don't have the capability of even manufacturing those technologies in our country yet. We have a lack of educated engineers. Our diversity programs are just getting started, and our minorities, and particularly women, are underutilized. Our money would be better spent fixing the problems that we have that are prevalent, as opposed to trying to distract the populace with a space program we cannot afford. It would be different if we had a place we could go that was close and achievable, because I certainly agree with the idea of preserving the race is extremely important. But we have yet to identify a habitable planet that is within reasonable range of the Earth. And if we can't even locate a place that we could go, then funding the effort to get there seems to be money poorly spent. Much better to look at the priorities that we have to keep government in place and operating. If the population revolts because they don't have food, because we can't get them vaccines, because we can't keep them healthy, we're not going to be able to make our space program work anyway. Much better to let the dance nations spend their money on these programs, and perhaps we have our educational facilities participate in some remote way, but it is not a priority. Our priorities are very terrestrial in nature. And looking at technology in general, which is the part that the Parliament put forward, the Prime Minister put forward, that too is problematic. We lack the skills capable of installing the technology, servicing the technology, and making the best use of technology. We only have to look at countries like Africa, Iran, and most recently Afghanistan to see what can happen if the support from the centralized from the supplying government goes away. Governments change. And so depending on a high technology company to come in and help us with government support for long periods of time may work over the short term, but for the long term, we'd be beholden to those governments. And this time around, it's not the UK, Spain, or France. I should say England, Spain, or France. We'll probably be looking at Russia and China, and we all know the problems of taking money from those countries that come with significant payback requirements that subordinate us to those countries. And I would argue that we want our government to support our citizens. We don't want our government to support some other government or some other location's citizens. We want our government to support the problems we have here, not become subordinated to another country. That is not our purpose in being. We need to make sure that our people are healthy. We need to make sure our people are educated. We need to make sure that our water is clean. We need to make sure that our government is solid and sound, and that they support our people, not everyone else. I mean, look at the pandemic as it exists today. We do not have manufacturing capability to build the vaccines in country. If something happens to one of the suppliers outside of country, we're just going to be hit by the vaccine. And look how this virus came in. This virus came in from other countries. We didn't have the virus come up here. It came in over from overseas, and we lacked the protections to keep our people safe. We need to fix that problem first, and then we can think about things like exploring space, and even looking at exploring space. We haven't even explored our oceans yet, and there certainly we've discovered in the oceans and in the forests medicines and capabilities that we are also just learning about, and that have a much higher near-term potential given our current socioeconomic level. So I object to the position the government has taken. It is certainly fine for a country that prints money and has excess budget to consider things like space exploration or just investing in technology in general. But our needs are more fundamental. We have people that are sick. We have people that are starving. We have people that are homeless. We are having a hard time keeping our citizens safe. As we discovered from the pandemic, and we need to fix that first. That has to be our priority, not sending people into space. Though there are a few people in government that I would certainly like to send there. That is not our priority. We need to focus on our people. We need to focus on the here and now, because that's where our current problems reside.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Opposition Leader of the Parliament, for your speech. Now I request Andreas. He is also a Minister of the Parliament, Minister of Space Affairs. We are observing all of the very young and energetic Parliament. Actually, they took over the government side. So hopefully this will be very interesting. And beside that, the peoples from those who are observing this Parliament, they have different questions. So if you have time, beside your debate, you can respond. Honorable Minister of Space Affairs.
Thank you. Yeah, what the opposition said so far, it did make a lot of sense, and there were some great concerns. But the thing is actually that if you look at NASA's return on investment on what they're actually spending, their budget, then for every single dollar that they're actually spending on everything that they do and develop, they actually get back somewhere between $7 and $14 into the economy, and that's just based on all the technologies and licensing and all these different kinds of ways that NASA is actually spending their money, and this is actually just in the U.S. So if you just look at the world globally, we'll have likely a much greater return on investment than just between $7 to $14 if you just really look at all the technologies and all the progress that comes from that. And the thing is also that the Prime Minister also alluded to was also that in space, so many exponential technologies, they're actually first developed in space because they have to go for something radical and something different to make it work there, because it's just completely different way of going about things, and they just don't have the same capabilities that we actually have on Earth, and that actually means that a lot of really important technologies that we're using today have been developed in space, such as things in medicine, such as a CAT scan and X-ray, and also different technologies to clear blockages in one's veins during heart surgery. So there are a ton of different technologies that have come from space and have been developed there, and that also was mentioned by the Prime Minister, like in terms of things such as food production and 3D printing and all that. Like so if you just look at those technologies and the impact of that, then there is certainly a lot to take away and a lot to gain from it all. And even things which we take for granted today, such as cell phones and GPS signal and all that, it comes from space. So if we hadn't explored space and gone out there, then we actually wouldn't be able to communicate in the way that we are used to doing today, and our world wouldn't be as global and as collaborative as it is in some aspects today. So there have definitely been a lot of benefits from doing all this, and also if you just think about the future potential of developing new technologies and finding new discoveries that we can use here on our Earth. Also in terms of global warming, for instance, there have been a lot of beneficial discoveries in terms of how scientists can figure out ways to reduce emissions from space, and also pictures from space have actually been very beneficial to really analyze what is going on in different parts of the world, and also just based on future exploration, it's hard to know what we'll actually find and all the benefit that we can gain from that in terms of other planets, in terms of different compounds, like all kinds of the metals, what we can find and use on Earth. The thing is also that our resources aren't infinite, so if we're just using our own resources that are really crucial for our future development, we can find a lot of different materials and find additional materials of what we're currently really needing on Earth. So there are a lot of different things that people don't really consider when they actually think about the big cost of exploring space and to just go to new go for new discoveries there. But the thing is that there's so many benefits, and it's hard to predict the future for it. But the thing is, if we currently have already gained so much from it, and we haven't even colonized any planets so far, it's just interesting to think about how much more progress we can gain from colonizing different planets in the future.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of the Parliament, for your excellent speech. And now I request Deputy Leader of the Parliament, Professor Donald.
Hi there. I want to back in a little bit to what Rob started with, but before I do, there's been several questions, and the honorable previous speaker just talked about, which is colonization of planets. When you think about the solar system that we live in, there's 9 planets, maybe 8, depending on whether you consider Pluto a planet or not. The only one that has any possibility of us colonizing in any meaningful way is Mars. And Mars does have an atmosphere that's incredibly less than Earth's. It's like 5 times less than if you went to the top of Mount Everest, where people can barely breathe, only certain people can, and then went 5 times as high, you'd be the atmosphere of Mars. And there's this idea, science fiction idea, of what's called terraforming it. And the idea is that you use certain kinds of bacteria that can actually live in circumstances like that produce oxygen, and use the dry ice, which is carbon dioxide, that lives on Mars. And from that carbon dioxide in the water that's there, you produce enough oxygen that eventually you create an atmosphere there, and that atmosphere is enough that it starts trapping heat. And the carbon dioxide, you produce enough carbon dioxide. There's a question if there's enough carbon dioxide available to actually do that. So we don't really know. Many people think there isn't. And so that would be a dicey proposition there in the first place. And the second problem is that Mars doesn't really have a magnetic field. So the solar wind would blow the atmosphere away, and it would be very difficult to keep it there. So that's really not, it's very questionable whether that's actually possible at all or not. So really what you'd have to do is to create a colony there is to have airproof domes and somehow get the oxygen into those domes. And, in theory, you could do it using photosynthesis or some sort of means where you could continue to produce oxygen. But in order to do that, you'd have to get the materials there to build it. So it'd be extremely expensive, and it would also be something that would be very difficult to maintain because you'd have to keep getting the materials there. The idea that we could produce factories, we'd have factories there that would produce the CO2 instead of on Earth. Well, the CO2 on Earth is produced by fossil fuels. So we'd have to get the fossil fuels to Mars somehow so that we'd be able to burn them. And that, of course, would be incredibly expensive as well. So really, in reality, it isn't. It's the costs for it are exorbitant, and it's hard. There's no way in any conceivable way that we could get a return on our investment. And the nearest planet is that could conceivably have life on it is 4.5 light years away. They're called exoplanets, and what they are is they're planets that are close enough to the sun and far enough away from the sun that they're in what we call the Goldilocks zone, which is the close enough and far enough away that they aren't too hot or they aren't too cold. And the closest one that we know of is 4.5 light years away. And at the speeds that we go, it would take generations to get there. So the idea of being able to colonize other planets is basically, it's science fiction. It's a wonderful idea, and it's an exciting idea, but the costs of it and the return on the investment are just not there. And as I said, I was going to back into Rob's idea, which is that the problems that we're faced with are real. Global warming. I don't know if you've seen the movie Don't Look Up. I really can't recommend it too highly, but it's basically a metaphor where the Earth is about to get hit by a giant comet and destroyed, and people just don't pay attention to it. And I won't tell you the end, but that's sort of the situation that we're in right now. And I'm very interested in sociology, and there was a sociologist named Lester Ward who had the idea that we couldn't control society. We didn't really know what changes we could make that would solve all of our problems, but we knew enough now to try things that could possibly work and find out if they worked. And if they didn't, we could try something else. And we know enough now that we actually have things that we could try. And it would be, since we can do it, it's kind of immoral that we don't. And we need to start putting our resources into the kinds of things that we can do to start making a difference. So the idea that people are glued to their television set watching rockets take off, is that a good thing? Why is it a good thing that people are sitting around glued to their television sets? That to me is a danger. And we need to have the people in the world not outside working together with each other, loving each other, and trying to make a difference, to make the world a better place, to learn, to grow, to make the changes that we need to make our world not get hit by a comet, not get destroyed. And we don't need to try and live on planets that we really can't live on. We need to make this planet a place that we can live, and do it as soon as we can.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Leader of the Parliament from the opposition side. Now I request a member of the Parliament from the government, Professor Paul.
If you look at science fiction from a few decades ago, science fiction novels, they were full of wonderful new technologies that we haven't heard of. Some of them are coming into existence now, but they were full of hope, it seems to me, for the future. And if you look at science fiction now, it's almost exclusively dystopian, dying planet, losing everything that humans have worked for, losing human consciousness even, and so why is the switch there? Well, part of the reason for the switch is the things like the pandemic and the problems that we face with inequality, with poverty, with, of course, the risks to human society, continuance from abrupt climate system change, which is getting more and more, people are having more and more understanding. It's not just the crazy alarmists, so-called alarmists. It's, the public is getting very concerned, in fact, such that young women are often reluctant to have any children because they're not sure what world we're coming into. So what we're lacking is hope for the future. Humanity really needs a common goal to unite it, and it can have this common goal through, collective sort of, work towards some project, some enormous project. And, what project could be better than expanding humanity's presence in the universe to, go out into space, to try to colonize other planets, to try to provide, as Elon Musk calls it, planetary diversity. If you look at some of the, greatest thinkers of our time, if you look at some people like Stephen Hawking and some, top environmentalist people, they're really thinking that humanity is on its way out, that we don't have that we're all heading in the wrong direction. So, we have always been in our history an exploration species, whether it be, crossing seas to explore unknown lands, to go to the polar regions of the earth, to go down to the deep depths of the sea, to go to the tops of mountains. And we've always been an exploration species, and why should that stop, I guess? It seems to be built into the human brain, the human psyche. We have, definite novelty filters where we need to feel like we're advancing. We need new things. And, the goal, we need some very so-called sexy goals. I mean, we have goals to eliminate poverty on the earth, to provide food for everybody, but those goals are somewhat, they're important, but they don't really stimulate the imagination, the human imagination, like space exploration does. And, as many of the great speakers have said, the technology spin-offs from space exploration were enormous in with past exploration, and will likely become, much, even more unlimited with future exploration. And, we're not, as we have this debate, there's people on the planet, obviously, that are putting forward the companies and the action to actually achieve what we're talking about. So it's not really a hypothetical thing. Specifically, the advancements of SpaceX in the last few years have been arguably, exponential, with the Starship launches and successful landings, the ability on a routine basis to send up rockets to put satellites in orbit, et cetera, to get global communication systems. And one of the big problems facing us, on the Earth with climate change is, sure, we need to, zero fossil fuel emissions, and getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies will go a long way towards that. But governments continue to cling to this fossil fuel economy with their subsidies. So we've gone far beyond the point where slashing fossil fuel emissions will be sufficient to stabilize the climate of the planet. We also need technologies to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And one very good point was made that with putting industry that creates emissions up into space will, allow the Earth to recover, not to have an atmosphere and ocean, that is completely saturated with greenhouse gases. So, but in order to have time to do these things, we have to address the huge warming of the planet. And some of the ideas are marine cloud brightening, to brighten clouds over the oceans to reflect sunlight away, or to put MEER is a project, MEER, to distribute mirrors on the surface of the Earth to reflect solar radiation. But it seems to me that the simplest way to reflect some of the sunlight to cool the planet would be to have a vast area, very, very thin mylar sheet, highly reflective, coated, aluminized, or with a gold film. And this would be an extremely low volume and lightweight device, but it would have an enormous ability to reflect away a small fraction of a percent of the incoming sunlight to allow the Earth to cool, to give us time to deploy these technologies to remove carbon dioxide and methane from the atmosphere, for example. So all of these things are kind of connected. We have very deep existential questions on the planet, but I think, hope is part of the human condition. Humans need to have hope, or they need to have reasons to get up in the morning to look forward to our future. And exploration of space is a way to provide that hope and give humanity a common goal to unite it and to move forward.
Thank you, Professor Paul, for your excellent debate. We have our another debate analyst, Mr. David Schumacher. Thank you for joining today's session. Now I request a member of the parliament from opposition side, Mr. Marshall.
Well, thank you, Sharif, and thank you for my fellow parliamentarians. As a member of the loyal opposition, I'd like to point out that the debate point is not whether we deploy technology in space, it's whether we spend the assets that we have now to go into outer space and populate other locations and other planets. As we know, Elon Musk has already made statements to the effect that his target is Mars. And my fellow parliamentarians have pointed out, as Donald pointed out and Rob pointed out, Mars has issues with it, especially for now. Will they be overcome? I'm sure they can be overcome. We've overcome a lot of things in life. But I find it quite ironic that the Transhumanist Party, the members of the government, want to go into outer space when their very own members back in the 90s advocated that their focus on technology was okay, as was presented in Julian Huxley's essay on that name, which created the Transhumanist Party. But Natasha Vita, who was one of your early members, she said that her party was too neurotically geared towards environmentalism. And here you're focusing money on space. And as we've all pointed out, including your own members, Paul, the Honorable Paul, and Gennady, and everybody has been mentioning the fact that we are faced with a existential threat of climate change and a climate crisis. And this is real. This is not something that somebody made up. Of course, there are plenty of people who think we've made this up, but the science is in. It's there. And not only that, I take umbrage with what the Honorable Member of Parliament Paul mentioned about that going into space will help us address climate change. Well, yes, it might, but we have real solutions here and now on Earth. And yes, there's a return on investment by NASA that the head of the government, Gennady, showed and actually enumerated the return on investment in $14 for every dollar invested. But I think what we're proposing, the honorable opposition, is that we need to invest in the here and now practically to recover the planet from its problems. Now, if you want to send up a spaceship to deploy a satellite that will help us get information about the planet, that's one thing. But the premise of the argument and the debate today is about going to other planets. Well, that's not going to help us right now. And time is of the essence. The Thwaites Glacier is melting, whether you like it or not. It's built in, it's baked into the planetary problems. And you're not going to change it by going into outer space. What will change it is deploying technologies that we have here and now to remediate GHG emissions, lowering the carbon footprint, lowering the temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade. And we know it's possible. Is it possible in time to change what's already baked in? Probably not. But certainly spending assets and money in going to outer space and going to another planet, which will take certainly a decade, if not more, of energy and effort. And NASA is not going to do it. The people that are trying to do it are SpaceX. In other words, Amazon's founder, Virgin Atlantic founder, and Elon Musk are the ones that are making the headway right now. But their funds are meager compared to what needs to be deployed to change the planet's climate crisis now, in the here and now. So as the member of the loyal opposition, I would propose that we take those funds and we allocate them as GFANs, which is an allocation of a group of financial entities and governments to solve the climate crisis now after COP26, to get to a net zero now, not in outer space. Putting factories in outer space, great, but that's not going to change what we have here and now. You're not going to change global warming by going into outer space. You're going to change global warming by allocating assets to technologies that exist here and now to lower GHG emissions, improve soil health, improve water quality, improve the quality of life for humans on this planet here and now. On this planet, not on some other planet. By the time you get to that other planet, it'll be too late. If you look at Times Square, where this New Year's tonight, they're going to be counting down the clock for New Year's. Everybody follows it around the world. But there's another clock that's counting down. It's at 14th Street, Union Square in New York City, and it's counting down the climate clock. We have less than 7 years. We have less than 5 years, essentially. Well, we have a little more than 5 years about left on the climate clock. And what is that counting down? It's counting down the point of no return where we cannot recover. But we can. We have the opportunity. Just reallocate the assets and the funds and the energy. Instead of going to outer space, which is admirable, nobody has a problem with going to outer space in the sense of science fiction or in the sense of getting there when we get there. But if we're going to save our planet and our people and our time, we need to allocate those assets here. One thing I'd like to point out, the approach that we, the loyal opposition, take is, yes, people come first, planet comes next, profits come last. And you can have profits. There is ability to get profitability out of the climate crisis if we address the climate crisis in a transparent and honorable way. But we need to do it here and now, not in some future idea of going in, launching colonies into outer space. What about the rest of the planet? Think of all the people watching here now. Are you going to be in outer space? Is your children or your grandchildren going to be on that colony and be saved? We don't have the time for that. So I would argue, along with my Prime Minister Rob and our Minister Donald, that our party advocates the ability to act now, but not in outer space. Take the $130 trillion that GFANS has allocated for climate change and A&R for here on this planet, not in outer space, not on some other planet. Mars is not going to work. If you think it's going to work, then I think you're in a science fiction world. And that's okay, but what about your descendants and their descendants? Are they going to be around here? We don't have time. So I would say that it's time to take the bull by the horns, as we say, and allocate the assets and money towards real solutions that exist here and now. How do I know? I am part of companies that have those solutions. We have the ability to risk mitigate the climate crisis, have the ability to risk mitigate the health crisis that come about because of the climate crisis. We have the ability to address all these issues here and now on this planet And yes, it's great to fantasize about going into outer space, but that is a fantasy, not a reality. It's real. You see people like Elon Musk, his goal is to take phosphates out of Mars and bring them back to Earth. He's even stated that publicly to increase fertilizer. But is that what we need? Do we need that approach to improving our soil health? I don't think so. I think that is a very expensive proposition. There's a simpler proposition here and now to take waste, pyrolyze it into soil amendments that would allow us to make a circular economy as opposed to the current economy we have of an industrial economy where we take everything and throw it out the window and don't recover it. We need to do what Europe has done, create the mission to create a circular economy, to go back to environmentalism, even though your own parliamentarian back in the 90s poo-pooed that, thinking that you guys are neurotic. Well, I think the neurosis has gone to space. That's what's happened. So we need to take a proactive approach on this planet here and now to take everything that we are doing and make better jobs, more wealth, more food that is healthy food for people to consume, and create good paying jobs for people around the world. It doesn't have to be just in the United States. It can be around the world. It can be in Malaysia. It can be in Bangladesh. It can be in Pakistan. It can be in India. It can be in Southeast Asia, or Asia. Everywhere we are on this planet, we are threatened with a climate crisis that is here and now and approaching us at lightning speed, faster than any rocket ship that you're going to send up into outer space or that Elon Musk is sending up to outer space. So I think the time is of the essence. I believe that our head of government, the loyal opposition, Rob, and my fellow minister have pointed out, Donald has pointed out, that the actions have to take place on Earth, not in outer space. Outer space is great. It does help us create new technologies. We acknowledge that. But the technologies that we're using now to create the ability to turn around the climate crisis were created here on Earth, not in outer space. Yes, I acknowledge, medical advancements in transplants and things like that came out of NASA, and we need that. Nobody's saying we shouldn't allocate funds to NASA. But if you look at the 3 private enterprises that are going into outer space, and you got Elon Musk being accused by the Chinese that he's causing traffic jams in outer space, and outer space is so huge. So why is that occurring? That's because people are not thinking with their gray cells. They're thinking emotionally, and they're trying to get to outer space because it's, again, as the government has pointed out, it's science fiction. It gives hope to people. That's fine. But we have undersea water problems that needs to be explored. You want to allocate assets for exploration. Look at our planet. I just saw on a LinkedIn post a picture of the planet, of the Pacific Ocean. You know how we always see North America or Europe or Africa or the Middle East as the picture of that part of the planet? This showed the Pacific Ocean. It's all water. We are 3/4 water. We are water. We need to solve those problems. So there's acidification occurring in the ocean. If you want to solve the problems on this planet, going to outer space, yeah, it may help, but it's too little too late. We need to take what we have now and apply it on this planet here and now. So I say, along with my Prime Minister Rob and my Minister Donald, that as loyal opposition, we say, stop your neurosis, like your own advocate in the beginning of the 90s said, but come back to environmentalism, come back from outer space, come back down to Earth. We are on planet Earth. Everybody watching here is not in outer space. They're on planet Earth, and they're being affected by a pandemic that is created on planet Earth that could be solved by planet Earth. So we can create the ability to prevent zoonotic diseases like the pandemic. We can do other things that are all connected to the environment and solve this environmental crisis and get people back to a true humanism that is people first, planet next, and profits last. I rest my case.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Speaker from the opposition side. This is very close debate. I believe that from the government and opposition, they are doing excellent job. And there's a good news that we have our observer from United Nations, Professor Talib, as well as we have our politicians, Mr. David Schumacher. After the debate, we will get some feedback from them. But I'm sure this debate is very, very close. And I think that we can decide after the rebuttal round. So first, I request from the opposition side, opposition leader of the parliament, Professor Rob.
So the government has proposed we go out into space and go to places like Mars. Let's just take one example of the problem I'm putting forward. Studies have showcased that while Mars may be cheaper to get to, living there will be far more difficult than Venus. We should, in fact, be going to Venus if we're going to another planet to preserve the race, because on Venus you don't need spacesuits and you don't need a magnetic field because it's already got one and it's already got an atmosphere. Yeah, you'd need oxygen, but living on the planet would be far easier than it would be on Mars long term. Yet we're going to Mars because it's cheaper. And the reason we're going to Mars because it's cheaper is maybe we can mine some minerals and bring them back to the US and manufacture them. And of course, we know manufacturing is accounting for 23% of the carbon dioxide we're pouring into the atmosphere. It was argued that we take that manufacturing off planet. That would be great, except once again, that's only 23% of the carbon dioxide. The vast majority of our pollution is coming from things like agriculture, which we could also move off planet, but just think of the logistics costs of the food. Our people who are having a hard time affording the food of today would be completely unable to afford the food of tomorrow, which would be pointless. Our argument is we have a series of problems we have to address here domestically that are causing people to die now. Going off into space may solve a problem of an asteroid impact, or we could escape the Earth. Except right now we don't even have a foolproof way, and certainly not in this country, of even identifying an asteroid that could hit the planet, let alone being able to prepare and get people on board and get them off planet someplace else that is safe. So what the Parliament is proposing is yet another distraction from the problems that we have today to spend money on technology and capabilities that we can't use. We lack the skills to take advantage of, and our people are dying of problems that we can fix. We can control pollution. We can clean the water. We can find ways to manufacture the medicines we need in country. But to do that, we need the funds. And if those funds are going to some space program in the hope that we will develop something comparable to SpaceX, I mean, even NASA hasn't been able to develop something comparable to SpaceX. Why don't we just let SpaceX be SpaceX and solve the problems we have here today, where we need the help, where we need the funding, and where the people that put us in office expect us to spend our time. When they're safe and we have free funds, I'm all for going into space and playing around out there. But until then, I think we ought to focus on our people and keeping them safe, keeping them healthy, and keeping them productive. The opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Parliament from the opposition side. Now I request for the closing remarks, Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament. Before I give him floor, I request after this Parliament, maybe you can develop some committee like climate change committees or any kind of development committee, and you can give some chance to our opposition member of the Parliament. Maybe they can serve for your committee and they can create a better economy and better sustainable economy for your country. So now I request Honorable Prime Minister of the Parliament, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sharif, and we would certainly be happy to maintain an ongoing dialogue with our loyal opposition. Hopefully, in the course of that dialogue, I will be able to convince the loyal opposition that it has established a false dichotomy between the benefits of going to outer space and the need to solve problems here on Earth, because the two are not mutually exclusive. And the decisive answer to the opposition's critique is, why not do both? Why not do everything? The opposition claims that there are budgetary constraints. However, if we think about the situation differently, the constraints may well go away. For instance, in the United States, the Defense Department and related activities account for roughly half of all discretionary spending. And by contrast, only 0.5% of the US federal budget, or $22.6 billion, as the opposition pointed out, was provided to NASA. So clearly there is ample room to expand the budget for space exploration and colonization. Indeed, it was approximately 4.5% at the time of the moon landing in 1969, and using much more basic technology than what we have right now at our fingertips in the form of our mobile phones. Humankind was able to land people on the moon, and yet we haven't been back on the moon for nearly 50 years. And the advanced technology that we have developed in the meantime will make the task a lot easier. Now, the honorable opposition member, Mr. Marshall, pointed out a statement made in the 1990s by transhumanist Natasha Vita-More. For the record, I would like to state that she was making that remark about the neurotic focus on environmentalism with regard to the Green Party, because she instrumentally ran as a member of the Green Party for the city council in Los Angeles, and she became disillusioned with the Green Party and resigned that position precisely because she thought that the Green Party wasn't forward-thinking enough in terms of considering creative solutions to environmental problems, rather than just focusing in the most direct way possible on those problems. But the fact is, you cannot solve major problems like the environmental problems that face our species using the same technology, the same thinking, the same status quo attitudes that led those problems to come about. You need a different approach, and that different approach is to push outward the boundaries of human possibility, to create a robust space infrastructure that could then be deployed to help us solve those environmental problems. Will the space infrastructure be the complete solution? No, there are complementary approaches that can be deployed here on Earth, as the opposition pointed out, but I don't think that takes away from the government's case in this situation at all. There were examples provided of exploring our oceans or developing manufacturing capabilities in developing countries that currently don't have those capabilities. We can do that too. There have been statements made about healing the planet. Well, why not do that simultaneously? Education, employment, medicine, healthcare, clean water. Humans can be inspired to provide all of those if they see a positive trajectory for our species, which is what space exploration and colonizing other planets will provide. The opposition has stated we have yet to identify a habitable planet, and the nearest exoplanet that might be habitable is 4.5 light years away. Well, why not create our own habitats, designs for orbital habitats like the Stanford Torus or the O'Neill Cylinder have existed since the 1970s. It's just a matter of deploying the resources to actually bring them into being. The opposition has stated that in many countries, people lack the skills capable of installing, servicing, and making the best use of this technology. Well, we respond that this does not preclude investments in technology education. Indeed, when technologies are available, when people see a growth industry, they will want to learn more about those technologies and become adept at them. Think about the many highly capable programmers that have arisen out of developing countries where there isn't a great internet infrastructure, there isn't a lot of access to digital technologies compared to more advanced countries, and yet these people learn the skills because they want to better their lives, and often they provide the IT workforce of more developed countries as well. So if the technological capabilities become available anywhere, I think people everywhere will want to be interested in them. And finally, because I understand our time is limited, the opposition pointed out to the Don't Look Up film as an example of the urgency of the situation that faces our species. Well, I would like to note that the Don't Look Up film literally deals with an asteroid impact that is about to affect the Earth. And indeed, we could be suffering from such an asteroid impact. We don't know when, but it would behoove us to improve our asteroid detection capabilities and invest ample resources, because this is the kind of existential risk that could wipe out our human species. It's even more dire than climate change. So I would suggest it is a moral imperative for our species to overcome that existential risk, and all of the other benefits that stem from space exploration and colonizing other planets are added bonuses compared to preserving humanity. And with that, I hope that we in the Transhumanist Party, as the government, have illustrated the vital importance of colonizing other worlds and greatly expanding our investment into space exploration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Actually, we want to see you as a Prime Minister of any of the parliament, especially as a president in USA. And besides all of the speakers actually doing very well. I think our audience really excited that how, and they bring a lot of questions, and our speakers and the parliament member, they actually respond many of the questions. And we are really happy that how they actually attend the debate, how they take their preparations. This is very close debate, and we have our honorable debate analyst. He's a real successful politician. He was the ministers of Jordan, as well as he was Secretary General of UNWTO. Now he's also Secretary General of World Tourism Organization. This is part of World Economic Forum. Our great leaders, Professor Talib. Professor Dr. Talib, what you want to add for today's discussion? You are honorable.
Thank you so much.
Speaker.
Thank you so much, Sharif, for this
Yes.
very interesting session. I want to say two things here. We should distinguish between the priorities, as the Prime Minister said, of doing outer space excavation or not, and the need to do that. In other words, I'm not against the opposition when they say there are more urgent problems that we need to look at here. But if we have the funds, and we will have the funds, we should do both, as the Prime Minister said, because we can't stop technology. Technology, to me, opens so many possibilities, so many avenues. And it is not right. I'm not a scientist to decide whether it's Venus or Mars, Professor Rob. I don't know. You decide on that. But what I know is that we can't stop the hope in technology. Can't stop the technology from moving forward. Yes, of course, there are problems on Earth now. Climate change, employment, poverty, inequality. All of these issues must be addressed. These are priorities, of course, but especially the developing countries, developing world. But that doesn't mean that we should stop our technological advancement. And space, to me, is another technological advancement. It creates hope and imagination in the minds of people, and we need that. We need that badly. We can't live without it, even if we decide not to. It's going to happen anyhow, because people are going to continue to establish new facts on the ground. This is the story of technology. Since mankind became mankind, we can't stop the flow of technology. And space is now the new technological venture. So that's what I want to say. Thank you. Thank you so much, Prime Minister. I completely agree with you. You can do both.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Professor Dr. Talib. And we want to see that many of our parliament members, they can serve for different developing nations. And maybe you have a lot of opportunities, or you have scope to utilize our human resources for the global community. So I really impressed how you support World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you, Professor Dr. Talib. We have another highly experienced politician. He contributed a lot for the politics. Mr. David Schumacher, and he has different views. Even though I know he is from Transhumanist Party, but I feel that for his comments, he is not biased for the Prime Ministers. He will be neutral, and he will give his opinions for this Parliament.
Yes, thank you, Sharif. And you're correct. I think that's a good introduction and a good representation of my viewpoint. So, as I've listened to both sides of this argument, I am actually very, very encouraged by the passion that I see from the different points of view. And I think that here is the real key as far as I'm concerned. Let's harness the passion of those here on Earth. Let's harness the passion of those who view going into space. And let's not just limit the discussion to that. Let's harness the passion that people have for making humankind, the planet, the solar system, wherever we go, better. Because when we do that, when we harness that passion, it's like a ship moving, and it has energy behind it. And we can make changes in navigation based on what we learn, and we can direct resources based on what we learn. But the passion is actually the fuel. It's what keeps it driving forward. So as others have said, let's not do one, let's do both.
Yes.
How much of both do we do? How much fuel do we have? Keep fueling it with that passion. Let's learn, and let's keep talking among both sides. And actually, there's more than two sides to this argument. There's many nuances in all of this. Let's keep talking in that network and make each other's proposition better as one side contributes back to the other side. Let's do both.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher, for your excellent contribution for World Talent Economy Forums. Especially, this is very good learning for the developing world. Especially, developing nations has major problem in politics and policy development. So I believe those who join in today's dialogue and today's parliament in the future, they will contribute in their country, in the parliament, inside the parliament. This is very important because I learned from Professor Talib, politics is very important. We should not avoid politics. We have to engage with politics, and we have to solve problem through the political organizations. This is the one of the excellent example that how we can create more effective debate inside the parliament. So thank you, honorable parliament members. Hopefully our audience, they will learn different important aspects from today's debate, because debate is very popular in developing world, and this is the way how we can attract human being and how we can solve many complex problems. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, honorable speakers of today's parliament, for joining today's session. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Live long and prosper.